Spirit of the Fireflies, written and told by Kiefer Adams. Ever since his crew had played a ghostly trick on him on the old iron bridge, Duncan had remained strangely quiet for several days. Rusty, Rheneas, Skarloey and Peter Sam had to admit that it was such a peaceful time on the narrow gauge railway. While Duncan was recovering from his ordeal, Peter Sam was finally allowed out of the yard again. He promised that there would be no more trouble with trucks, or bridges for that matter. One night, Peter Sam was working late. The winch on the incline had been playing up, and Peter Sam was to take supplies to repair it. The moon was full, and Peter Sam was the only engine out and about. As he stopped at a small station halt, Peter Sam was greeted by a swirl of colourful yellow lights dancing all around him. "They're beautiful," he exclaimed. "What are they?" "They're fireflies," explained his driver. "They're little insects that come out at night." Peter Sam couldn't take his eyes off them. But right in front of him, the fireflies took the form of an engine. Peter Sam only saw it for a few seconds before the fireflies parted ways. When Peter Sam returned, he told the little engines all about the fireflies. Rusty was intrigued. Duncan, remembering all too well about the fireflies and what shape they took on the bridge, looked away. But Rheneas and Skarloey were deeply worried. They knew all too well that there was more to the fireflies than Peter Sam had thought. The next morning, Skarloey was resting in the shed. He was to serve as relief, and luckily he had time to chat to Edward. Thomas was shunting nearby. "Is everything all right with Peter Sam, Skarloey?" asked Edward. "It's just when he brought his train to Crovan's Gate this morning, he was talking about fireflies and how they were swarming around him." "That, I'm afraid, is a legend Rheneas and I know all too well," said Skarloey. "How so?" asked Thomas from the corner of the yard. "Years ago," said Skarloey, "we had an engine that used to work in our mines. He was always fascinated with nature, especially the fireflies. Rheneas and I told him to focus on his work and leave the fireflies be, but he wouldn't listen. One night he ventured off to the mines, but he never returned. He didn't heed mine or Rheneas's warnings about the fireflies, and they were so fond of him that they drifted him away, never to be seen again." "What absolute nonsense," grunted Thomas. "Bugs can't wisp you away just like that." "Don't you have work to do?" huffed Skarloey. That was Thomas's cue to leave. "It's a puzzler, I suppose," said Edward. "I'm sorry I can't do much, Skarloey. I've got to go. The Fat Controller asked me to pick up some new machinery for the quarry." And Edward puffed away, leaving Skarloey alone with his thoughts. That evening, Rheneas and Skarloey were lucky to be working with each other at Boulder Quarry. They were still pleased that Duncan had been quiet for several days, but all the talks of fireflies had put the little engines on edge. That night, a large order of stone had been made to go to the other side of the little railway. The foreman came to see Rheneas and Skarloey. "The train's all ready," he said. "Which of you's going to take it?" Rheneas and Skarloey gave each other nervous looks. Neither wanted to leave the other behind. But eventually, Rheneas spoke up. "I'll take it," he said. "Do be careful," said Skarloey. "You never know who's going to be out and about tonight." "Come on, Skarloey," said Rheneas. "I didn't just return from the works to be scared away by little bugs." "I'm just saying be careful," reassured Skarloey. Rheneas promised that he would. Before long, Rheneas was coupled up to the train and he set off from the quarry. Skarloey could only watch and worry as his brother slowly puffed away out of sight. All was going well as Rheneas puffed through the night. But when he reached the same spot Peter Sam had discovered the fireflies, they appeared and swarmed around him. "What a beautiful sight," said his driver. But clearly Rheneas' crew weren't seeing what the old engine was. The fireflies started swarming around Rheneas like a small tornado. Rheneas wasn't sure at first, but when he squinted his eyes, he could just make out the shape of a little blue tank engine before him, covered entirely by the fireflies. The engine looked at Rheneas, as if it had a pleading look in its eyes. "Help me," it wheezed. "What can I do?" cried Rheneas. "You didn't listen to me or Skarloey." Then the fireflies wrapped around the engine, and as if it was a puppet on strings, they brought him forward. "Help me," the engine groaned again. "And I'm telling you I can't," protested Rheneas. Suddenly, the engine was forced forward and bumped into Rheneas. "Help me," it cried in a pleading tone. "Go away," shouted Rheneas. He let out a great cloud of steam. "Rheneas," said his driver firmly, "there was no need for that. They weren't causing us harm." Rheneas had his eyes shut at this point, and by the time he had opened them, the fireflies had scattered. Rheneas puffed cautiously on, unable to block out what he had just witnessed. When Rheneas came home the next day, he was pale and timid. Skarloey was worried, and even the Thing controller saw it best that Rheneas had some time off work. But Rheneas wanted to get through the day. By this point, Duncan had since recovered from his ghostly ordeal and was feeling a lot better. He had just left Croven's Gate with a passenger train when he saw Rheneas coming towards him with a small goods. "Ghosts aren't so funny to laugh at now, are they?" he whispered darkly as he and Rheneas passed each other. Rheneas didn't say a word. Duncan was quite satisfied. He knew for certain that Rheneas' ghostly experience was all too real.